Winter's Grand Prix of 2016. My name is Frodan, and we're wrapping up round number 1 Swiss momentarily with our final series of the round. Now, what ended up happening was there were some technical issues at the very beginning of the day. There always are when you're trying to set up these many devices and these many Ethernet cables all into one switch. And as such, some players didn't get to actually finish their matches or even start it. So instead of just sitting here for an hour and a half waiting for them to play it off stream, we decided to put the final players on. And who do you know? We also have Sottle in the tavern who decided to join us. He originally did have the day off, but he wanted to cast some and hang out. So he stuck in with his old buddy Lorinda, and they're going to bring you guys Chakki from Team Luminosity up against Dethelor, who I believe is a free agent right now. So it's a really good match. We were actually fortunate enough that this 2 players remaining end up being 2 notable ones. So to the stream, their entertainment, they just want to see players and see games, and I think this is definitely a good pairing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chakki, I'm sure you straight away leads out at you guys as one of the strongest names in this tournament. Dreamhack Austin champion, of course, as well as a long-standing player in the Hearthstone scene, going all the way back to 2014 even, when the game was really starting to burgeon onto the stream. But Dethelor, maybe some people aren't as familiar with. What can you tell us about Dethelor?
So Dethelor is one of those players who just quietly wins Hearthstone games and gets through Swisses and so on. He's played 2 Dreamhacks Grand Prix this season, and he's 15 wins and 4 losses. One of those losses coming in a top 16, so he's 15 and 3 in the Swiss. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That means he's 8-1 and 7-2 split.
Yeah, I think he actually went 9-0.
He went 9-0 through Dreamhack Valencia. Yeah, he was the #1 seed going into the top 16 of Dreamhack Valencia with a 9-0.
And then he lost.
Yeah, the curse of the #1 seed.
Yep.
Yeah, ends up being the case all the time. So Dethelor, definitely one of those Swiss monsters that I like to call him. Super good in those Swiss formats, specifically in the group stages, and that might be scary for a guy like Chakki because you don't really necessarily think of Dethelor when you're preparing lineups. You always think of, what if I run into a player like Oskak, or what if I run into a player, like Purple or Firebat, some of these like really notable guys who always go through. But then Dethelor is one of those quiet assassins who will always perform really well. And not until he's like 6-0 or 7-1 do we start thinking, oh, well, actually, this guy might go through. And of course, we know he's a good player. Why aren't we considering him more often? Taking a look at the lineups, Shaman being banned, not surprising at all, but we have Druid, Warrior, and Warlock. Probably, in my opinion, one of the most common lineups we have. Maybe instead of Warrior, you have Mage.
Yep.
And then going into Chakki's lineup, he chose to bring Hunter, which is a very interesting choice because I know a lot of people thought Hunter was very weak at this point of the metagame. Do you have any opinions on Hunter being brought here, Sottle?
I'm kind of on that side of the argument, honestly. I think Hunter is in a pretty poor spot right now. I know Chakki, you would describe him as a Hunter loyalist. He's very historically a big fan of aggressive strategies and Hunter decks, although his big win at Dreamhack was on the back of a pretty much pure control strategy.
Priest and Paladin.
But most importantly, he's a statistician. He is a guy that honestly believes people aren't doing enough testing. Right. He actually thinks that a lot of people are going too much on feel and not doing even tech card testing by the numbers with some of the methods that he uses. So I'm sure if he has Hunter here, it's not just a feel thing for him. He actually has some numbers to back that up.
Yeah, it's definitely intriguing to say the least because I want to see if he can actually introduce to us something that we've been missing. Is it an aggressive Hunter strategy? Is it more secret-based? Is it more mid-range based? Is it something else that we're not expecting? The time will tell. Let's go into game number 1, and I'm going to leave in the hands of Sottle and Lorinda. Enjoy, fellas.
Thank you, Frodans. Yeah, we are going to kick this off. It is looking like it's at least a very heavy secret package from Chakki. As soon as Snipe starts to come into your deck, you know that you are running a large number of secrets, not just the sprinkling that goes with the Cloaked Huntress. And this is the N'Zoth Warrior coming out from Dethelor. We'll be interested to see whether this is the Twilight Summoner list that we've been seeing recently. But having just hit those Ravaging Ghouls, it may be something a little bit different because the Twilight Summoner list has generally been cutting out those ghouls, surprisingly, as powerful as that card seems.
Right, so it'll be definitely interested to see exactly what he goes with this. And Chakki, if he's bringing Hunter, and it is a mid-rangey secret Hunter, if he's thinking that's good against Warrior in general, maybe he's going to take advantage of the slower Druid decks as well.
Yeah, it's very possible. And honestly, Snap Pick High Main almost always seems to be your pick against Warrior, but in that situation, Cat Tricks in hand, maybe, just maybe, there was a moment of thought for the Cloaked Huntress, but I think cooler heads prevailed and the High Main did get picked out there by Chakki. And now, Secret Keeper drawn off curve is actually very frustrating with this hand.
Especially when you know one of your hunters has gone as well.
Yeah.
Would have been interesting if those two Catricks had been two different secrets where he would have gone with that one. But the high main against Warrior is just, it's a meme, but it's almost a true meme that if you hit them with a high main, you're in a really good spot.
And look at how awkward this spot is. Like, even if you played Secret Keeper there on the board, you're giving your opponent a War Axe target. If your opponent coin Acolytes, you then have to bow the Acolyte, so you don't even get to start developing your secrets anyway. So the turn 2 draw of the Secret Keeper may as well have actually been a whiff, because it really wasn't a viable play for him on 2 mana. It was such a poor draw for him in that situation.
Right, and you really do need to get that pressure on as early as possible. Interesting looking at the Gore Howl here in Dethelor's deck as well. Card that went out for a while because everyone started playing Harrison.
Yeah.
But now we're in a situation where people can ban Shaman, and also people aren't playing Harrison anymore, so Gore Howls are sneaking back into more and more Warriors.
Kill command picked up. That is the one remaining kill command in the deck, because the second KC was the other option from the tracking that we didn't discuss over the Cloaked Huntress and the high main. So the burst damage is being limited here just a little bit, and now Chakki does use his turn 3 to develop the Secret Keeper in combination with the Catrick. And as a control warrior in this matchup, Lorinda, how big of an issue is Catrick for you?
I mean, your deck normally is all spells, although in the N'Zoth Warrior it's a little bit better. It's not quite as devastating. You may well be able to develop a Cairn or Sylvanas before triggering the Catrick. You may be able to hold on for some sort of Ghoul combo or some sort of, revenge combo, something like that, to just get rid of it. But in general, it's a real nuisance.
I think crucially here as well, Dethelor still has access to the coin, and he already has a Brawl in his hand. So anytime he feels like he wants to Brawl, he knows he can just throw that coin out first to proc the Catrick and just catch that in the Brawl as well. So he's in a reasonably comfortable position, but the problem with that line, okay, that solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, the problem with that line is that he's got a hand that kind of dictates the usage of the coin at some point over the next couple of turns. So drawing the Elise this turn actually gives him a viable play here and means that he can continue to play around that Catrick option, because he's ruled out Snipe so far, but not a lot else. So he knows there are still quite a few options from his perspective that secret could be.
Yeah, one thing that you can do in this deck as the Warrior as well that I think people don't necessarily respect enough is you're really not in any hurry. You're playing against Hunter, so you naturally think, oh my goodness, got to kill everything and not die and all that. But actually, if you take your time against a secret deck, what can happen is the secret deck starts just drawing secrets, and unless you're actually triggering them, and you can avoid doing that for a very long time with most of them, it doesn't really get to do much. Like the bow's sitting there not doing much. As long as he doesn't trigger this Catrick, he might be in a good spot. So it's Chakki's job to force him to trigger the Catrick at this point.
Kill command used from Chakki in that situation. So knowing that there is the secret in play now from Dethelor, does that kill command being used give you any information? Because if it was a freezing, would Chakki have kill commanded the Elise? Probably not, right? He's probably fairly happy with that just being frozen and moving on with his life. So I think Dethelor's actually maybe learned something about what that secret is without actually having to test for the freezing in this spot, but he's still back in this awkward position that I talked about last turn. Coin 6 into 6 seems so solid in this spot, but that does eventually give up that pressure of the Catrick, but maybe coin Sylvanas and then follow that up with the Brawl is a possible line that he's looking at, tanking the damage from that Catrick for one turn, but as you said, he might just think he can afford to be patient here.
So if he does that, the other problem isn't just the Catrick, which he can deal with if he plays Sylvanas, then next turn he could Brawl, but the other problem is boosting up that bow.
Yep.
The bow is really big for the Hunter against the Warrior. If it can hit you for 9 or 12 instead of 6, this game often comes down to an extra 3 health. If you can just prevent it for one turn, I think he might do nothing here. He's going to go for it.
He's going coin Cairn here, which is yet a third option that we didn't talk about, which means he's not even necessarily fully committed to this Brawl on next turn. You know, Sylvanas, generally when it comes down from Control Warrior, is a Brawl setup. It demands so much respect from the opponent that it often gets traded into, even in the world where there isn't a Brawl to follow it up. But Cairn, similar kind of threat, but nowhere near as severe. So Chakki will be able to play his risk-reward strategy here. But remember, one kill command used on the Elise, one kill command discarded to the tracking. So he knows he needs to keep board this game more than likely to be able to get the job done against the Control Warrior.
Yeah, that's going to be awkward for him at the end, but so far he's doing a good job of keeping the board. Dethelor, of course, can challenge this high main a little bit better with the Cairn and then use the Brawl to clean up the pieces afterwards. Because he could have played the Ghoul and then just traded in. It wouldn't be the best, cleanest of trades, but it's a way of challenging high main. And you do tend to want to keep the Brawl for after you proc the high main if you can. It's just not usually sensible to do so.
Yeah, but Chakki here actually bypasses a high main turn, which is rare against Warrior, but you can immediately see why this situation is horrible for Dethelor. There is a second cat trick in play. The coin has been used, which is his best tool to proc that cat trick. So even if Brawl were to come down here, which sure looks like it could be pretty solid, his Cairn, his Bane Bloodhoof would survive, but a new cat would get generated after the Brawl, the bow would get buffed, there's more damage coming through, and Dethelor, from his perspective, also has to consider that the secret played is not cat trick, it could again be freezing in this situation, which would be a nightmare against his Cairn if he chose to attack with it.
And it's much more likely, it's twice as likely to be the freezing, although he may possibly be able to infer that it's a second cat trick because that card was stuck in Chakki's hand for a while.
Yeah, that card came all the way from the far left, but you can see here from Dethelor, you know, this is not him just forgetting to attack with the Cairn first into the Grandmother. This is him respecting the threat of freezing trap in this situation. So he does eventually take the additional damage from it, and that is lethal or left on board from Chakki because of that second cat. 2 cats in the opening hand. Both ended up getting their work done, getting that 4 damage through. And off the back of that, with that high main in hand that he tracked into, superfluous to requirements, Chakki just got it done nice and early.
Right, I don't know if that shows the tracking was good or bad. I think it shows it was good because he's going to win with a high main, even with the additional stuff afterwards.
Right.
Does make you wonder about maybe the coin Sylvanas would have been a better play, but he was going to fight for the board. It makes a lot of sense when you're in that context. It took on the high main. But coin Sylvanas may just have been a little bit more of a stalling tactic because Chakki would have been less likely to play stuff into that as well.
Yeah, I think potentially what he did is third on my list of plays that turn. I think, you know, passing and just gaining a little bit of armor was viable, and then using coin followed by Brawl immediately to deal with the cat trick. Or my favorite play was coin Sylvanas, as you said. But moving on here, remember this is last hero standing, so Chakki gets to re-queue his Hunter, and Dethelor picks the Zoo into it, which, having not seen Explosive Trap or Unleash the Hounds come out from Chakki, even with those cards in the deck, Zoo can definitely get the job done. If you haven't seen them, you are feeling in a very comfortable spot.
And this is the reason why I think we were both wondering how Chakki's lineup was going to work with Hunter at the start, because Zoo is going to be in a lot of lineups today. It's really good in the meta right now, and Hunter's not particularly good against Zoo.
No, absolutely not. Although this is not the most promising opening hand from Dethelor. Does have the 1-drop, but hand runs out of steam a little bit. Looks like I think he actually held on to the Soulfire there as well. Soulfire is actually a very powerful early game play against Hunter because of the 4 health minions that they can play on turn 3. Not only Animal Companion anymore, now Cloaked Huntress also added to that pool.
Yeah, and it seems weird, but if you can protect your health total early on just by going all in, you actually get to life tap more as well. Sometimes the problem the Zoo can run into in this matchup is Hunter puts you low enough that you can't abuse your hero power to get back into it, but if you protect that life total early on, you can end up just using it much more aggressive than you'd expect. Again, Hunter not quite as fast as you would think sometimes.
Oh, the glorious Golden Celebration card back. I'm so jealous. Chakki rocking Golden Celebration, awarded to all the players that have reached the finals of a Hearthstone Championship Tour seasonal event, which Chakki did all the way back in winter. So he, as I mentioned in the intro, one of the most storied players in the history of Hearthstone, going all the way back, you know, to pre-release, honestly, when people were playing competitively in the beta. He was around already back then, has kept going strong all the way through to 2016, and has the shiny golden card back to show for it.
You don't look jealous at all. Sottle's face is just a picture right now of jealousy, envy, and hate. That's just Sottle's face. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Something that Chakki's done, actually, is he pretty much took October off because he knew the HCT season was starting in November. And so to pace himself, give himself that longevity you were talking about, is he's going to be able to play now for solidly to try and get as many points as possible for next season.
I have a question, Neil. Yeah. Is this good? Thinking. Is my question. Coin Cloaked Huntress +3 secrets. So now, this is where this deck becomes an absolute nightmare to play against. And this is where this deck kind of gets a hidden buff, honestly. If you test this deck on ladder, or if you test this deck in open tournaments, where perhaps the standard of player isn't what you're expecting to face in a huge high-level tournament like this, average players are nowhere near as good at dissecting board states with multiple secrets like this as high-level players are, so your win rate with this deck will actually be a little bit inflated. Test first for freezing, gets the news that it's not freezing, Cat Trick does get activated by the Soulfire, and now he's free to cast this Demon Fire, get himself a 3/5 Malchezaar's Imp. I don't think he wants to be tapping in this situation. Does give potential, if Bow comes down, for the Zoo to just immediately lose the board here, which if you lose the board this early as Zoo, then you are in trouble. So he actually goes to buff the Taunt here instead after attacking, which looks like he's missed some damage, but still his sequencing was important there to be able to rule out the various traps. But his kill command draw.
Yeah, before that kill command, this play was actually fantastic from Dethelor as well. It protected so well against the bow. The bow was going to have to pile into the remnants of a 3-1, protecting the imp. But now the kill command has made it look kind of awful just for a second there as well. And how is he going to get back on board here? Obviously playing a councilman, but it's going to be a slow process now.
This is so rough. No, Knife Juggler would have been a tool here. Dark Peddler maybe to pick up a Stone Tusk Boar, an Elven Archer, a Mortal Coil to kind of deal with this. But right now, Dethelor's stuck doing exactly what Zoo doesn't want to do, which is playing into a board where your opponent has initiative. This is, you have no deck, you have no cards in your deck that really give consideration to this happening, because your goal is to always consistently be ahead come turn 2, turn 3. So this is a horrible spot now for Dethelor to be in.
Yeah, the only thing he's got going for him is obviously he has still got 30 health. He can try and fight back, but picking up Barnes here is going to allow Chakki to flood the board in minor terms at least, but minor terms are plenty right now.
I love Barnes. This is essentially just a free Barnes. I mean, sometimes Barnes can be high risk because you need an outcome like that. Sometimes you need an outcome like that to be powerful. But in this situation, even if he got a weak outcome, he was still in just a perfectly natural, powerful spot. And now the wide board that he's created here actually removes Leok as a bad outcome from his animal companion. So he's actually put himself in a spot now where any follow-up he wants to play from this hand is just immensely powerful.
Yeah, you often don't need big things against Zoo, you just need things against Zoo. And so, like you say, any outcome at all there. Making it interesting here for Dethelor, because he almost certainly trades into the Cat in that here, but which order does he play his 3-drops in? Which one does he want to lose if he wants to play both minions? Does he want to risk a tap? Maybe. And only get 1 minion down just because those 2 3-drops are so powerful in this match. That seems a long route back, though.
Yeah, remember there is still that one secret in play from Dethelor's perspective that he is he's trying to deal with in this situation. I believe there is still one live secret. It's not shown on the overlay, but I'm trusting my own memory here despite what the screen shows.
Yeah, I believe he hasn't tested for snakes yet, which would be a disaster.
Exactly, which is what Dethelor's considering here, because Chakki went face with the 4-1, so he is clearly encouraging this trade to happen. He wants that to go down. So from Dethelor's perspective, how does he react to that? He just says he's going to go face. Remember, Explosive was already ruled out on the initial turn where he attacked face with the 1/3 Voidwalker. So yeah, that one secret still being in play. Dethelor has the hard read on that being snakes, and this could be one of those awkward games where neither player respects the minion trades, and we just have an outright race. And Dethelor has one of the best racing boards for Zoo, really, with the double Councilman in play.
Yeah, it's going to race pretty quickly. Unfortunately, both hero powers race the same direction, so that will slow things down a little bit.
Yes, indeed. I'm sure Chakki here is really in the comfortable spot here, so he can choose to dictate a couple of clean trades if he wants to. Barnes into the 3-1, for example, or just pop his high main to generate the extra power. Looks like the latter is what he's going to go for.
Wow.
And now just keep on pushing through, actually chooses to Deadly Shot here, and with this board state, I do not see a combination of cards, unless this is the famous TJ Sanders Yogg Zoo, that somehow gets Dethelor back into this game. That's a good start, though.
Yeah, getting something down for nothing, allowing the tap. Does he draw something he can play? Kind of.
Well, he definitely can play that.
He can definitely play. Just hurts a lot. That's 5 health just to get an extra 1-drop on the board.
Yeah. I remember, Zoo is a deck that's been through about as many transitions as anything else, but I remember back in the day when Hunter was so popular in the format as one of the most common decks, people just started cutting Flame Imp entirely because they couldn't afford to take that additional damage. We were seeing Argent Squires, sometimes even Zombie Chow, believe it or not.
No, the question was, do you play 0 or 1? If you played 2, you were just like out of touch completely.
Exactly.
And occasionally you'd play 1 just because you might not play a Hunter, but Hunter back then was the equivalent of what Shaman is now.
So yeah, unless this Dark Peddler discovers him a 1-mana Yogg-Saron, unless this Mortal Coil draws him a 4-mana Yogg-Saron, unless this Direwolf transforms into a Yogg-Saron, no, we are gonna have a concede come down from Dethelor, and Chakki is going out to a comfortable 2-0 lead with the deck that I said probably wasn't too powerful in the format. What do I know?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, Chakki, again, the most preparation of pretty much anybody outside of Firebat, I should imagine, for any tournament. Constantly checking the stats. I am surprised. I'm going to just look to see how this develops through the day for Chakki, but I'm going with the fact it's going to be the Druid decks that he's targeting because they've got heavier and heavier to beat the other Druid decks.
It's true, yeah. We've seen a lot of people leaning towards that Barnes Yasharaj build now, which can potentially put some more dead cards in your hand that don't really play out and affect the board state in any kind of rapid way. But hey, speaking of playing out rapidly, there is a Wild Growth and an Emperor in Deathlord's hands. Dethelor, sorry. I said Deathlord.
Wow, nice new name.
I'm having flashbacks to an age where Priest was playable. Cloaked Huntress in the hand from Chakki, but nothing to go with it just yet. But Dethelor does have that all-powerful Wild Growth.
Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts. The last week or two of Priest not being playable.
I, for one, welcome our new Priest Overlords.
Really?
No.
Check out Sottle's Twitter, boys and girls. Read the last few weeks' posts. Anyway.
Why you got to expose me like that?
I spammed you, dude.
That's true. All right, fair enough. So yeah, Dethelor, just considering the various implications here, I think Wild Growth is an auto keep. He's just questioning how greedy he could dare to be against this Hunter deck, which has shown a decent amount of aggression so far. He does hold on to the Emperor. He's praying for more mana acceleration or the Innovate, and he does draw the Barnes, which gives credence to the idea that he might be on that Yasharaj train.
Yeah, so we may get to see the matchup to see if it works in Chakki's favour, and see how this ends up. And just to point out there, the greed levels, obviously it looked like you could keep both of those cards, but you can only keep one or the other. If you kept them both, it would be too heavy. So with the Emperor and the Swipe, but the Emperor, going to be a long way off. Also, going back to game 1, Chakki didn't play his high main.
Yes.
So Dethelor really doesn't know what he's up against 100% right now.
Well, he saw high main come from Barnes in the following game, so he knows it's in there.
He saw the snakes though as well.
Right, so he knows it's also a very secret heavy build because he's now seen snakes and snipe on top of freezing and Catrick that are normally in the deck. So he knows it's probably somewhere in the region of a hybrid Hunter deck.
Yeah.
Not, full on late game. Maybe there's no Rag. Definitely no Call of the Wild is the read that I would be having on this deck.
Yeah.
But also, I generally stick my neck out and say no Houndmaster if I was trying to make a soul read right now, but you can see in Chakki's hand the Houndmaster is there, so he's clearly found some way to bring this all together.
We've seen a lot of different ways to build Hunter recently, so it's almost a spectrum of cards now. It's not like you can say it's a fast, a medium, or a slow Hunter, but even within those categories, there are so many different builds. Saw Nick Chipper play Leroy, double high main, and Rag all in the same deck in a serious tournament recently.
Seems good. Yeah, double high main picked up here off the tracking. It's just a matter of whether he thinks he has enough to do to occupy himself until high main here, as to whether he needs that animal companion instead. But high main's so powerful against Druid, I'm sure he's going to take it. He does have a solid curve until then. But Dethelor's curve looking not too shabby himself. And Barnes, Emperor, Malagos, he has cards in his hand that can just single-handedly win games.
That pickup!
But here's what Hunter can do. Hunter can put themselves in a position where your win conditions become too slow, where your cards that carry games just are not able to do that anymore. And maybe Dethelor might need to rely on the saving graces of Barnes here, because that's the only win condition in his hand right now that's looking potentially quick enough to keep up with this aggressive start.
You say the saving graces of Barnes, or you said something like that anyway, words to that effect. If he just rips Yasharaj off this, and then just goes through his deck. This is one of the chances.
And that is, I was going to say, it's a legendary. I saw the border come out on top, but it is just the Blood Mage Thalnos. Still nothing to sniff at. Card draw effect, spell damage if it's left alive on the board. So now Chakki has a various amount of options to consider here. He has his own Barnes, but it's slightly awkward in terms of how he interacts with the board state here if he just spends the entire mana on Barnes, but has nothing really to take care of the board nicely. And that is just a mediocre Secret Keeper, so no game-winning Barnes from either side here.
Chakki, a few decisions to make here, obviously. Running into any of the 3 targets would be a viable play. I suspect he will just get the free kill while it's available, slow down that spell damage. And the Hunter's not in any particular hurry here. He will be in a minute when he sees this Emperor, but until then, he's not in any real hurry. And Dethelor's just going to work out, do I want another cat trick in the face? I suspect the answer is he doesn't want it, but does he have to go for it?
Yeah, I think the decision of the trade from Chakki on the previous turn was, of course, I mean, spell damage swipe is devastating in the best of worlds. The fact he has that cat trick in play right now, if you give your opponent the ability to spell damage swipe where you have a cat trick in play, just coin and then use the swipe to then take care of the cat trick as well, that would have been absolutely crushing for him. So no huge surprise for me to see him take care of the spell damage. And Dethelor does go ahead and activate the cat here just to speed out his Emperor into play. And this is probably looking to just set up a huge Fandral turn on the follow-up now.
Yeah, he's going to be able to heal for the Feral Rage at some point soon. And he's not a million miles from just winning with Malygos in a couple of, 3 or 4 turns time as well. If he can just sneak some damage in, not die, and combo out. That's what the deck does. Chakki, on the other hand, is going to be able to utilize that Houndmaster. It seems to be pretty good with Cat Trick, it turns out. And pretty good with Barnes pickups.
Yeah, it's not great in this spot, because if he used the Houndmaster, he would have to send the Houndmastered cat into the Emperor to take care of it. I think when your opponent is at 30, even if you are playing Hunter, it's pretty difficult to disrespect Emperor to that degree and go face in this situation. So I'm looking more at a kill command turn here. Yeah, this looks a little bit tidier.
Grandmother's swipe protection as well, I guess.
Develop the Grandmother, which does hold him back a little bit against that swipe, as you said, but with the mana reductions, there is always opportunities for Dethelor to weave in Living Roots and Hero Powers. Moonfire's, of course, always available as well. So Dethelor can start to make some magic happen now.
Yes, so much can go on here, to the point that this is so strong, he's not even going to wait to Nourish. Usually Fandral Nourish is a game-winning play, but he doesn't even need to do that right now. He's just going to build a crazy board. And interesting, we haven't seen an Unleash here either yet, and Unleash is a card that might be required.
Yeah, I actually love the timing of this from Dethelor, because not only was it a hugely powerful Fandral turn, it answered most of the questions he needed to answer in this spot. It also went directly into Chakki's high main turn and said, you are not allowed to play high main this turn because you have to deal with Fandral. As it turns out, there is no possible way for Chakki to deal with Fandral in his hand, so we will probably just see the high main coming down anyway, but at least I like the attempt from Dethelor in this spot to disrupt Chakki's curve. This is what you need to do first and foremost. When you're playing against a curve-out deck, disrupt their curve. Make them do something else than just slam the biggest card in their hand every turn.
So you might be asking, well, why don't I just always play the high main if someone plays Fandral against me and just ignore it then? But you're about to find out. Yeah, this is going to go not very well for Chakki.
Did you say something about Fandral Nourish winning games of Hearthstone?
I may have mentioned it in the past.
Well, I suggest we cast that card. That seems like a reasonable starting position for this turn. Picks up the swipe as well. Innovate to go with it as well. He could Nourish again if he wants to.
Seems fair. And
he actually doesn't really have anything to do this turn that achieves much beyond the second Feral Rage. So innovating the Nourish here just allows him still to do that. I really don't see anything wrong with this play. I think we do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out what could go wrong for him. He knows that Fandrel's going to live, so anything else he can do to protect the Fandral for another turn is also good.
I'll give you a reason not to do it. Next turn he's going to have 10 mana, just even off the back of that one Nourish, and then he's giving himself Malygos Innovate Swipe on having a 12 mana turn. So
Malygos Innovate Swipe, 9 damage to a player's face. That seems reasonable.
And more importantly,
6 to all of the
Right.
high main beasts, hyenas.
Exactly, because he is still going to need to answer this high main question at some point. So actually, on consideration, memes aside, I definitely don't mind him holding on here.
Memes aside, where have I heard that before? So it looked like it could have been a better turn, but just look at the hands and the health totals.
Yeah.
Dethelor's against the Hunter, and he's got the slower deck. He's got more health than the Hunter, and a handful of things that kill Hunter cards. Looking really good for Dethelor here.
Yeah, this is actually really good recognition from Dethelor. I mean, we both got carried away in that potential double Nourish turn with the Fandral,
Right.
but, you know, I think if on a very narrow basis, if you looked at your hand, you would come immediately to the same conclusion that I said initially, which is, what else am I doing this turn? I might as well use the Nourish. The more important question of that, what am I doing next turn? The turn after that, the big picture of the game meant that Innovate was more useful to have in his hand to pair with the Malagos.
And it's actually something that I miss quite a lot, or see players taking advantage of, you know, really strong players quite a lot, is just don't get over attached to your Fandral.
Yeah.
Just use him to win the game. That's plenty attachment enough. And yeah.
Here
now
we
we're
go.
gonna see the
We
payoff.
called it. So the Innovate is going to proc the Cat Trick. The Swipe is going to tidy it all up. He has another Moonfire to blast off as well. That Moonfire will discount that Arcane Giant a little bit, unfortunately for him, only to 2. So he can't play a free 8/8 this turn. I give this turn a 2 out of 8.
A 2 out of 8. I give that casting an 8 out of 8.
Wow. Thanks, buddy. That's the first perfect review I've ever received in my life. And suddenly, Dethelor is back on the board. You said maybe Chakki was bringing this deck to the tournament to try and target the Druids.
Yep, sorry guys.
I said that maybe Hunter was a little bit weak in the format at the moment. Maybe I got that one wrong. One thing I'm very, very confident in is you cannot target Druid, because Innovate and Wild Growth don't care how hard you've targeted Druid. They will destroy you anyway. So there you see, even if that was an unfavored matchup for the Druid in that spot, he was still able to push through.
Yeah, Druid throughout Hearthstone has been a class that when you do get just Wild Growth Innovate in your hand at the start, it's got too much power to beat almost anything. Sottle's pointing and crying and laughing. But which hand is he pointing and crying and laughing at?
Well, I mean, so the Zoo hand is always going to be fairly powerful.
Yeah.
Right? They draw a hand consistently, but Living Root's Innovate Fandral against Zoo is about as close to perfect as you can get. If he can pick up, say, Living Root's number 2, a Wrath, something to go alongside this, something that he can live until turn 3, and then go Innovate Fandral Living Roots immediately on turn 3, then that is one of the huge ways that you can really push back against Zoo.
Just laughing about that because we're in a format that's probably the slowest Hearthstone's had in terms of overall, with all the mid-range decks, and you're on about if he can live until turn 3.
Well,
because Zoo is so brutal right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he has the cards in hand. He could just use that Living Root straight away to contest a Flame Imp that comes down, but ideally, I'm saying he would like to pick up a Wrath so that he can contest the board for the first 2 or 3 turns without using those 3 cards in the mulligan and then tie them all together in one go.
I feel that you probably have to play the Living Roots now you picked up the Swipe and just try and hang in there. It's not going to work out well if he does, as it happens, because Voidwalker's a pretty good answer, and it's going to slow down your Fandral as well. This is probably what he's thinking about. Chakki didn't mulligan much there, so Dethelor knows the hand is a 1-drop hand and probably got the 3 drops as well. Which it hasn't got the 3 drops, but he will be thinking in terms of Imp Gang Boss, in terms of Councilman.
I mean, here's my question. How good is Living Roots on turn 1 against Zoo now, really? Because they have an extra 1/3 in their deck. Let's remember that. Malkazar's Imp doubles the amount of 1/3s that they can play on turn 1. Possessed Villager, it's not great against that either. I think, like, these days, it's actually, even if you didn't have Fandral in my hand, I would rather use Living Roots to kill something directly, to kill a 3/2 or a 2/2 of my choosing, rather than create board tension that they choose how to dictate the trades.
I don't mind it too much because you get to trade in with your hero power and your 2 minions, so you're saving mana in that respect. In fact, if anything, for me, having the Innovate and the Fandral in your hand makes you less likely to play the Living Roots because you're not going to be able to hero power on 2.
Okay.
So for me, I'd rather actually do it backwards to you. So problem is that you're right. That's usually the way it goes.
Didn't we just agree that we're not playing the Living Roots on 1?
We did.
Okay.
No, I'd played it on 1.
Oh.
Because then on 2 I can hero power into the 1/3 and trade in the Living Roots and save a mana.
Okay. No, you're wrong.
But if I have innovate, then I'm not going to do that because I'm not able to hero power on 2.
All right, so you agree in this spot.
In this spot, I
not
agree.
playing
Yeah.
Living Roots on 1. Okay.
But in general
we're fine.
terms, I'd like to play it on 1 because I can kill a 1/3.
Okay, good. I'm happy. We're happy. We got
Cool.
there.
We got there.
So now, in this spot, this is a little awkward, right? Because this is what I was talking about. You would love to pair that Living Roots with the Fandral next turn alongside the Innovate, but that is a Flame Imp, and Living Roots is just the natural predator of Flame Imps. They just graze the Serengeti, Flame Imps out in the wild, and Living Roots just descend from the heavens.
Wow, this visual casting. When did you start role-playing?
I don't know. It happened at some point.
So obviously they're not able to play his Fandral because Zoo would need 1 point of buff to destroy it and take down one of your best cards. And obviously we can see as it happens at the moment until taps happen that it would have lived. But this is a far better way of contesting that board against Zoo. Some of the time you'll even get a card that just wins you the game, assuming he is playing the heavy version we think he is, which he may not be. Barnes does just sneak into decks these days.
Yep, it's very true.
And just managing to save that Fandral a little longer.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I was talking about all the way back from the Mulligan. He just wanted that one card to keep him occupied that turn. That Wrath that I was talking about. He could have just Wrath the Flame Imp, Wrath the Malcazar's Imp, whichever high priority target he wanted to deal with. Then he would have had that explosive Fandral turn. Yeah, he probably would have Wrath the Malcazar's Imp just to have the Flame Imp still on board for the Fandral Living Roots turn the next turn. But since he didn't draw that one card to occupy him, he decided quite rightly that he cannot hang around that long against Zoo anymore and just decided to go with Barnes onto the board. But Barnes just hitting a Drake. We had this conversation earlier as that people sometimes include Azure Drake as a good outcome for Barnes, and I strongly disagree with that. I think your Barnes outcome needs to be a lot better than this to be able to call it a good outcome.
Although in general against Zoo, a 1/1 is not too bad a thing. We saw that again a minute ago with the Hunter, but in this position it needed to be something a bit better, as you can see. Not really getting much done. Chakki making sure to get rid of it in case there's some accident with the spell damage occurs, because that is the only way at the moment in most worlds that he loses this game. We can see that the hands mean that he has got a chance of losing it. Dethelor's definitely got some play here.
He does, yeah, and suddenly now that Living Roots can start to come into play for its intended usage. He does start to tidy up this board quite nicely, but Dethelor will be absolutely terrified of the effects of Soulfire and Darkshire Librarian on this game right now, because the natural turn looks like Roots the Flame Imp, trade into the Voidwalker, cast the Wild Growth, go from there.
This, I thought he might just... This is how greedy do you want to be? He had the option to be incredibly greedy, wait to Fandral Living Roots next turn. The 2 minions are really relevant in that spot, so it's not just greed for the sake of it.
That is not a huge pickup for Chakki. As I mentioned, the Soulfire there would have been huge. I mean, he had the natural kill on the 3/3, he had the 50-50 of discarding the Silverware Golem, and then whichever card he discards, he would have replaced it with 2 brand new ones. Darkshire Librarian, probably the second best draw, followed by Abusive Sergeant and various things like that, which would allow him to trade down. But right now, his hand's just actually a little bit awkward. It doesn't really play into this 3/3 too well.
I wonder how seriously he's actually considering just playing at the Silverware Golem here. The reason I say that is because a 4/4 next turn might be a really important minion to have. Obviously, this is the better, bigger card. It's always going to be at least a 3/5, a 3/6.
Yeah, particularly against Druid, most of the time, and this is one of those awful general statements that people make in Hearthstone, if you get Argus on Darkshire Councilman against Druid, you win the game.
Yeah.
They cannot deal with 6 health. They can do 5 with Swipe Hero Power, with Blood Mage Swipe, sometimes that kind of tech inclusion in the deck, but if you can get Councilman up to 6, it's so hard for them to deal with, that Councilman just ends up doming them over and over again and just runs away with the game. So I think I like this line. It's a little bit vulnerable, of course, as a 1/5-2 removal, but Dethelor is actually going to disrespect the Councilman in this spot and just ask another question with Fandral, perhaps getting the read that Chakki's hand is light on buffs right now.
Yeah, and he got that right. Although his Fandral... I mean, also, if this happens, if what's going to happen happens, which is play your Argus and just trade everything into Fandral, it's not actually that bad for you. You get to pretty much clear the board as Druid in that spot. So even if the bad thing happens, then it's not going to be that bad.
The bad thing. So yeah, if Argus was to come down here, we'd have a 2-3 and a 3-6 in play, which it doesn't look all that wonderful, right?
You'd be obliged to run them into Fandral.
Yeah.
You lose the 1-3, which would be a 2-3, obviously. Your councilman gets injured, he gets taken down by Barnes, and then you can do what you like against the defender, just play Sylvanas.
It's not pretty, is it? But even the Demon Fire doesn't even give him enough power to take care of the Fandral, so it's either that or just commit to leaving this Fandral alive, and Chakki's already had nightmares about the first time he let that happen, so...
It's a really difficult decision to make because all of your instincts tell you from all of the games you've played, you must not leave Fandral alive. And it is indeed the Yasharaj deck, the really expensive deck that I think beats other druids, which is why people are going with it.
Yeah, I can definitely get on board with that. The Yasharaj inclusion, not a build that I personally favor right now. I think it does kind of slow it down on the occasion that you do draw Yasharaj in this kind of situation. I mean, this is case in point, right? You don't want to be results oriented over a one-game sample size, but drawing a 10-drop against Zoo, this is not really the spot that he wants to be in, but definitely does have its merits, as you said, in the Druid Mirror, as well as some extra power against Warrior, because quite often they just fall that one minion short of being able to get enough pressure through against Warrior, so Yasharaj makes a lot of sense there as well.
And we are in basically a Shaman-free zone in Last Hero Standing with a ban, so anyone who leaves Shaman open is probably either targeting it for some reason, which you can't do, or is crazy, which you're more likely to be in this room.
I'm just waiting for the first major tournament that just saves their admins a bunch of work and just says that Shaman is just globally banned for the tournament.
And then it's just best of 5 Last Hero Standing.
Yeah, best of 5, there you go. And then that way, the players who actually have come to the tournament deciding not to ban Shaman, the tournament's actually doing them a favor and correcting their mistake for them.
Wow.
It's win-win.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Even now, we're seeing that people who build their Shaman decks for situations in case it's not banned.
Yes.
So it's getting completely ridiculous in the Shaman front right now. But only a few more days of the anti-Shaman meta left, and then we get full-on Priest zone, so that'd be great.
Yeah, we have started to see some insane stuff coming into Shaman decks because people go down the line of, well, the only way my Shaman gets left up is, and sometimes the answer to that is, they have Freeze Mate. So we're seeing Eater of Secrets being played in Shaman. Like, that is the point we've got to where you basically have to consider your opponent a crazy person to have left your Shaman up, therefore you do something insane with it yourself.
So yeah, when we find out who wins this really stacked tournament at the end of this weekend and you're copying the decks and you're testing them out, don't copy the Shaman deck.
Yeah,
you will do badly with it.
But yeah, Demon Fire actually showing some worth there. One of Zoo's biggest problems as this potentially game-deciding Ragnaros 50-50 comes down here. Dethelor rubbing the Darkshire Councilman. Didn't work out for him though, so now the opportunity to push some damage through from Chakki is enormous, but he needs to go right now because I've said this before on a very similar game of Hearthstone. The first turn against Zoo where Rag comes down, it's often quite weak. But every turn it's allowed to live, that is an incremental advantage that swings back towards the Druid. So there is now actually a real timer clock on Chakki in terms of how quickly he has to get this done. And do you know what shuts down your timer clock? How about an 8-12 taunt?
Sure, just, you don't want to kill my Ragnaros. No, I want you to kill my Ragnaros. Come on, come at me.
Rag has no time for games right now. That's Sylvanas. What am I talking about?
That's great.
He's just pushing face. He's going to get this game done in 3 straight up 8 damage shots to the face. Chakki is just facing down an enormous wall now that he can't be dealing with. He's going to be looking through
Will
some
he
niche outcomes.
taunt up the 2 on the left, protect the Councilman, and then try and buff it over the coming turns? I don't know how you're going to protect it from a great ball of fire, but...
So Dethelor now, opportunity to draw 1 card with Wild Growth. If he picks up, there's nothing that really gives him guaranteed lethal, right? Because he can't draw 1 card that deals with 2 taunts, can't draw 1 card that deals 8 damage. So he'd be looking at like whether he drew a card that improved his chances of Ragnaros having a good outcome.
But he's not dying anytime soon, right?
Or alternatively, just slam Yasharaj and say that you can't kill me.
Because you can't kill me, I'm going to either kill you or one of these minions, so you can't do more than 14, 15 next turn. And that's if you somehow have a card that kills Ragnaros, which you don't. And then the turn after, you just clear up the board with all your minions. But he thinks he's found an out that he feels is better.
Picks up Living Roots. So, all right, it's actually a pretty mediocre removal tool in this spot. He can use it here if he wants to snipe the 1/1, just to take that out of the pool of attacks for Ragnaros. Increase the shots on face by at least 1, but it's also just potentially very close to lethal here, or will be lethal if Chakki taps. If he just draws Malagos, then Malagos Roots will get the job done. So looks like Dethelor was just fairly comfortable with his situation either way there. Went for the draw, decided not to take that small risk that he could die to, you know, runner, burst damage from the Zoo deck.
Corruption.
I mean, Corruption is a huge pickup here for sure. Power Overwhelming is probably the next best thing. But still, such a huge cost for his board to be able to plow through this the hard way.
Yeah, this is why I'd have liked to see Yashirai's last turn, because if somehow he does get through your Ragnaros, you just start smacking things down with the 10-10 while you're at it, and he has to kill that as well.
Right. So this comes back to the age-old dilemma in Hearthstone of what does the word safe mean?
Sure.
Because Dethelor's decision, like Dethelor recognizes that he's heavily favored in this game, so he's trying to work out what's my safest line. His definition of the safest line was to not take the risk of just taking a huge amount of damage by playing Yashiraj. But there is an inherent risk of doing that where you have less board presence. This is all a formality. While I've been waffling on, spell damage was drawn, the damage got pushed through, and Dethelor actually ties up the series.
Yeah, and a key play there was keeping back that Living Roots, which was very, very tempting to put on that 1/1 imp to really purify the rag hits. And he chose to keep that back, and that's just finish off the game.
He would have still had lethal. He could have traded his Emperor into the Taunt and Hero-powered face for the last 1 damage anyway.
Don't tell them.
He was just styling. It's fine. Don't worry about it. So this game has come all the way down to game 5 in this spot. Of course, Chakki went out to a very early lead with that Hunter deck that I said was perhaps looking a little bit weak from my perspective in the meta, but actually got a lot of work done for him. And it's the more standard, the more predictable Druid that's done the work fighting back from Dethelor.
Yeah, and just a reminder, everybody, this is still round 1. We're throwing this match in there. At the end, there were some issues at the start with people getting set up on the internet and such like. We're in a room of 200 people, so there's always going to be a little bit of an issue at the start. So we're just giving you this as an extra game rather than a delay. Round 2 will start, obviously, really soon at the end of this match.
Yeah, and Chakki's Warrior looks like, or is in fact, a Cthulhu Warrior build, not going on the N'Zoth hype train that a lot of people have been on board recently. Seems like N'Zoth is once again the dominant Control Warrior package that people are running to, but Chakki, perhaps inspired by Pavel's back-to-back successes with Cthulhu Warrior as part of his lineup, following up his BlizzCon win with that victory in Game Goon as well, has decided that, hey, Cthulhu Warrior is a pretty solid deck, let's run with that.
And I think this is consistent with his choice of Hunter, because this is another deck that does well against N'Zoth Warrior. So if it gives him it's not like a huge counter or anything, but it's just going, I think that Chakki's done the numbers and decided, you know what, there's going to be a lot of Warrior at this tournament, and I want to make sure I have more than one deck that beats it. I want to make sure I have 2 chances against Warrior, as well as obviously whatever else factors in with the Druid and such like as well.
Yeah, makes sense. He's got a very, very solid early curve here. He's going to basically fire and forget at some point off these 2 minions that he has in hand, the Beckoner of Evil and the Disciple of Cthulhu, and that means his magical 10 number has been reached already. Doesn't have to worry about that for the rest of the game, and that's actually hugely important because one of the drawbacks that Cthulhu Warrior can have versus other builds of Warrior is that they have something else to worry about, right? Like pure Control Warrior really only has to say, do I have to deal with this board? If so, what's the best way of dealing with this board? Whereas Cthulhu Warrior also has to say, how do I get my Cthulhu buffed in the process? So getting that done early means you can then fall back on a much more traditional Control Warrior style, and actually makes your plays a lot more simple throughout the mid-game.
Yeah, and it also puts a clock on Druid. The Druid against traditional Warrior, you're just a punching bag. It's like, I'm just going to draw some cards and hit you a bit on the way, and you're going to have to kill my board, which involves using your face, and then I'm going to beat you in my Malagos combo. But this Cthulhu Warrior does actually just say, no, you're not going to punch me, I'm going to make some things that you have to deal with on the way, slow down that mana curve a bit. On the downside of that, obviously, this particular Druid deck has 10/10s in it.
It sure does, but Probably just a shield block turn here from Chakki. Disciple of Cthulhu face seems a little bit wasteful, although it's not the greatest deck in terms of targets for Disciple of Cthulhu. You're primarily using it as an execute activator or pairing it with War Axe in this matchup, so it's possible that he won't need both of them for removal tools, in which case using one now on the board is actually valid. There is a small consideration for Bran. It only really dies to Coin Swipe and Feral Rage, which might be good enough for him to go for.
Right.
He's actually going for it, which is really, really interesting to me, deciding that he just doesn't need it as a late game resource in this matchup. Just going to play out here for the tempo, but what I find a little bit strange about this is he doesn't really have like an amazing follow-up with it. He could Disciple of Cthulhu Coin Maya Keeper is the only thing that really comes to mind that this is setting up for.
Yeah, it does kill Fandral.
Sure.
Because you get the double hit with the Disciple, and then you just trade in your brand. So
Sure.
it
Yeah,
does stop some bits and pieces from coming down right now, and maybe he just values the double buff on his Cthulhu enough that having this down. Also, it's something you can't leave. It's going to do what you said earlier about disrupting mana curves. It's going to make sure the Druid does something it doesn't want to do this turn.
Right.
You can't just leave it hanging around because you don't know what's actually going to happen.
Yeah, okay, so I guess from his perspective, if he's drawing out a removal turn here from Dethelor, then the first big threat would potentially come down going into his turn 5, where he just always has the guaranteed Disciple of Cthulhu execute to take care of it. But Dethelor with no answer in hand just decides to just go with the Fandral anyway, and now that play that you talked about is just going to happen. The double Disciple of Cthulhu is going to take care of this beautifully.
And even if this was to get swiped, it doesn't matter, because these two... I mean, Bran's not mediocre in this deck, but the Disciple certainly is in this matchup. These two mediocre cards are going to combine to do plenty of work.
Yep.
And they may not even get swiped. They may actually end up wasting another turn for Dethelor here. And if they don't, he's going to do it again.
Sure is, and Dethelor just really, really clunky hand. The double Nourish is actually the most promising part of this hand against Warrior.
Yep.
You actually do want to have all of your card draw effects early on. You know, keeping Drake even is often correct in this matchup, even without the ramp already. You just want to make sure you're always high on resources in hand. So the double Nourish is nice, but it's just the rest of the clunky nonsense on the right-hand side of his hand that's getting a bit awkward. Tries to cast the Raven Idol here just to get some answer to this board state, but just isn't really getting there right now.
This is such an interesting set of 3 cards. That all 3 of these could be useful in totally different scenarios to each other. So Dethelor having to plan how he thinks the game's going to pan out. He's decided he's going to end up winning it with face damage, not with some sort of crazy minion damage. That's not always obvious, because if you can get down a couple of Living Roots and Soul of the Forest, then the Warrior just can't deal with that. But he's gone with the swipe, which will probably end up going face sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so now Chakki back in another little bit of an awkward spot. The shield block still not cast from turn 3 when it was available. Maybe that is his turn now. Still doesn't have a shield slam in hand that he necessarily wants to pair it with, so cycling it seems fine. Does now pick up Twin Emperor, and as we mentioned, that is well and truly activated at this point, meaning that he has a potential power curve available to him starting on turn 7, but does need to find something to occupy himself with, at least for the next turn now.
And one of the ways that Druid functions is it needs to keep the armor down. Even getting the 10 armor from the shield bearer later would be really important, because the Druid just doesn't do 50 damage well. It does 35, 40 damage really well. But any more than that, it does start to struggle.
Yep, Dethelor actually went ahead and took crystals with the first Nourish, which I like only because he has that second one in hand. I think, you know, drawing in this matchup is generally superior. You do want to get through your deck quickly before the Warrior just starts to get out of range, as you were talking about. But with the second Nourish in hand already, and all these huge drops that he can spend a good 2 or 3 turns worth of mana on already on the right-hand side of his hand, the first Nourish for crystals looks perfectly reasonable. He can curve straight into Rag here as well, and if there's no minion in play, the Rag will cleave off the armor to the point where Shield Slam is not live. So he's actually got a decent chance from his perspective of sticking the Rag to the board. We can see Execute plus Execute Activator is in hand for Chakki though.
But then that is one Execute out of the way just in time for the Giant to come in, having removed that Shield Slam option. So absolutely fine for him, even if that course of action takes place. Just what Chakki does now is interesting. He's just hitting you in the face for 2. Just Why not? That
I mean,
is actually going to work well against Rag, in fairness.
Exactly. I think that's exactly what this is from Chakki. This is just playing around Ragnaros. He saw Nourish for Mana on the previous turn. That means two things. We talked about them. What are the reasons why you Nourish for Mana in this matchup? One, you have the other Nourish in your hand. Two, you're just trying to curve into Rag. So Chakki reads his opponent's behavior and says, what is the best play I can make against an expected Ragnaros? It's just having an irritating little 2-1 on the board.
And against something, well, against specifically Arcane Giant as well, if it wasn't even a Ragnaros, this still acts as an activator. You can still just hit it normally. You don't have to hit it for 2 with the Battle Cry. And yet, it's going to be a pretty important Rag.
And the Rag does take out the 2-1. Slam Execute is in hand for Chakki to still take care of it. Can't quite fit in the Cthulhu's Chosen with it, unfortunately for him, but Dethelor, he'll at least consider it a small victory that his Rag is going to get Slam Executed here and not Shield Slammed, because the Shield Slam would be the torturous thing. If you missed the shot to the face and then your Rag got Shield Slammed, that's the kind of thing that can put you on tilt, but the Slam Execute, of course, is an answer either way in this spot. I'm sure is the play we're going to see here from Chakki, because
just looking for
that
other
alive,
considerations. The only other consideration, I guess, is to Cthulhu's Chosen and armor up, and that way if the Rag does hit the shield, just nothing happens, although you just get rid of it. So he has to Slam Execute. Probably think about his future turns more than anything ridiculous like that, to be fair.
Unlucky. Sylvanas drawn with just 1 too few mana. He's going to have to go ahead and execute it here. That Sylvanas would have been a great pickup for the natural draw on his turn that he could have just jammed down to contest the Rag. But now he is still in a very, very comfortable spot. One of the biggest threats in the deck used. But as you mentioned, that is 1 execute gone. He would have much rather shield slammed it, because you always, or very, very often at least, need 1 execute remaining at the end of the game to deal with Malagos. Because when Malagos comes down, they clear out your armor.
Yeah,
you do not have armor to shield slam it. They Living Roots, Moonfire you in the face, and your armor is gone. So most of the time, one of your executes is just hard earmarked for dealing with that Malagos. One of those already gone from Chakki, so he's just going to have to a little bit cautious with the rest of his removal from this point. But honestly, this might not even be a classic Control Warrior remove your minions game. With this amount of pressure that he has in his hand, this might just be a beat you up game. Just jam all these big idiots I have in my hand and hit you in the face until you do not breathe anymore.
And he showed intention to do that right at the start with the brand play, and all the way through has been consistent with that play. Hitting the face for 2 from a Disciple earlier, that sort of thing. It's just been consistent with, I am going to hit you with my, as you call them, big idiots.
You know a thing or two about big idiots, don't you, Neil?
Wow. Why do I always set him up like this, guys?
I don't know. So yeah, Sylvanas looks pretty solid in this spot. Chakki will be considering that he has not seen a single Living Roots used, but that's not actually too much of a consideration in this matchup, because if you force them to use the Living Roots for the situation of trying to get a bad Sylvanas steal, that is 7 damage that's not going at your face. And if 7 damage doesn't go at your face, you start to just significantly out of range the Druid deck. You just start gaining too much life for them to possibly punch through.
And also, I mean, you're only reducing the odds of the Sylvanas. It's not even 100% clean counter for that 7 damage. You're only gaining some bits of a clean trade out of that. So, up there is Malagos. So the pieces are coming together. And
1 Emperor, please, is what this hand says right now.
It really does. And going face here seems okay to me. If you Living Roots into more pieces of damage, you've got to get this under control. If you can keep him down to in the low 30s, you can win with Malagos.
You're still a crazy person.
No,
that's the second time today I've heard you advocate going face.
I'm much happier with this one than the previous one.
I'm not a fan. I'm just not a fan. You just haven't seen any of the things that would ruin you in that situation. Ravaging Ghouls, Revenges, Brawls, you've seen none of them. All of them are miserable. Dethelor agrees with you.
He went 9-0 this year.
He's actually just going to purely hold on to the damage here. So, I mean, this is fine. This is a viable play. Playing the Living Roots on the board and going face.
No. I wanted to do this.
Okay, this is fine. This I'm on board with. It just keeping that Living Roots in hand with the hand that you have, just going for a pure burst damage plan from this perspective, saying, I do not need this Arcane Giant anymore, you, sir, may have it. This, I'm totally fine.
The only thing I may have done different is play the Raven Idol first, to work out exactly where I stand.
Okay.
So if you get another Moonfire, another Living Root, something like that, you know this is 100% go face. If you don't end up picking up those, you may have to think something a little bit different.
Sure. So Chakki now, of course, does have this completely free trade available to him, but he can probably get the signals from that play from Dethelor as to what's going on. So now he really has to think about how he starts gaining armor to get out of range of this potential Malagos kill that's coming out in his near future. So I think both players probably have a pretty good idea of what is going on in this spot.
Which is incredible, right? Because there's 15 cards in hand between them.
Yeah.
And they've got a good idea what those 15 cards are. And this is the downside, of course, of going face. This is what you know's coming. This is what you've let yourself in for. You are all in on this play.
And it looks like Chakki is just saying, hey, if you want to race I'm
me,
down
bro.
for race.
Yeah, exactly.
I just have 13 power in play right now. I can pull the kill switch and play Brawl anytime I want in this situation to bail out of this. So yeah, I kind of respect this from Chakki. Just completely disrespecting the 8-8 in play, because remember, if he trades his 5-5 into the 8-8, a lot more removal becomes live from Dethelor.
And
suddenly,
he knows that removal's there because of the play that's happened.
Suddenly he can Wrath an 8-3. He can't Wrath that 5-5. He can't deal with that 5-5 in any way, really, because it just doesn't allow him to, it'll just donate the Giant over. So Chakki's actually creating much more board tension with this position. I don't think it's necessarily even all about the face damage. It's just that this situation is a lot more awkward for Dethelor to deal with than the situation where this board state was the same, except there's an 8-3 instead of a Sylvanas on the other side of the board.
So Dethelor taking that mulch, I'm wondering if he's taking it for right now to just get rid of these 2 4-6s, or if he's actually scared that Cthulhu is coming down next turn and taking it as a preventative measure. And yeah, he's just going to carry on this race. We're going to see a photo finish here in this game 5. Both players just hitting each other as hard as they can.
Yeah, and I think Chakki's line in this game is actually pretty inspired, to be honest. It's somewhat creative. It's not a line of play that you would see a bunch of players take consistently, but I think he's actually going to potentially get rewarded here unless Dethelor can pick up that magical Emperor Thaurissan at some point. Maybe in the very next draw will be his last opportunity to get there in time, because he really, really needs this hand discounted.
And the vision shown from Chakki, you're saying it's creative. It started, I keep saying, but on turn 3 by just going, I'm going to play Bran. Sure. If you don't play so I'm going to hit you in the face for 4. If you do, I'm going to kill your Fandral. And then just playing a 2-1 onto an empty board against a guy with a hero power that can just kill it. And now that extra 6 health or whatever it is, you can see how much difference he would have made. It's just run him out of time. It's run Dethelor out of time.
So Chakki here deciding to bypass 2 armor in this spot just to swing 3 to face. So that means he is setting up essentially to have lethal here if 1 extra minion on his board dies. But does he open himself up at 35 to any number that's relevant? I don't think so, right? It would have to be some kind of insane double innovate nonsense.
Double innovate swipe, I think, is 9 plus 26.
26, so double roots would be...
So double roots, double moonfire, double innerfire, double innovate.
Yeah. Doesn't seem relevant.
Yeah, that's the only way the 35 matters.
The extra 2 just doesn't seem important, so I like this decision from Chakki. And the race was activated. Dethelor just did not have the tools to get there, and he's going to have to make a removal play here instead, but he does pick up the Moonfire now as well. So
wow!
His level of burst damage with Malagos potentially is Colossus. He just doesn't have the time to get there right now.
And he took a decision here. He could have just Malagos and cleared most of this up with all of his removal. But then how does he ever win the game if he does that? It just puts him completely dead. So he's tried to defend his Malagos combo, but it's just starting to use up things he doesn't want to use up now. This is usually the beginning of the end for Druid. There is the wild card. There is Yasharaj, which he may be thinking in the back of his mind might help him, but we can see... No, it's not helping anybody.
In the end there, I think Dethelor just panicked under the threat of the rope and just didn't quite play out the turn he was meaning to in the last few moments. He definitely didn't get everything done that he wanted to. I think he actually potentially miscounted mana as well. Thought he could get maybe the mulch out alongside the innovate to reduce some more of this damage on board, and it's left us in the slightly weird position of Chakki with 14 power in board, but not a single bit of extra damage from his hand to finish the game.
So now Chakki's in the position where he has to work out, well, how does this go wrong? Because it can.
Yeah.
And what do I do about it? He knows that Dethelor's close because he's just seen a panic turn. He knows that Dethelor's been saving stuff just from that giant attack 2 turns ago.
Right.
So he's got to work out how he doesn't lose. And I wouldn't be surprised just to see the Shield Bearer and Armor up here and trade in the 4-4.
But you also, remember, saw one swipe get used, one living roots get used, so he's actually started to check off a bunch of maximum damage melting away that Dethelor's able to do. So he says, hey, I had 35 last turn and you couldn't get it done. And
now you definitely can't.
You expended a bunch of your burn damage at the board, but now the second Innovate gets picked up, which means that Living Roots, Moonfire, and Double Innovate Swipe are all castable, but still nowhere near enough damage to get the job done. But with that extra Living Roots,
but last
on the previous turn, I mean, he had to use stuff.
Yeah, sure. If that had been 1 turn earlier setup,
yeah,
he would have had the 35 impossible situation that we were talking about.
So yeah, having to use the swipe here on the minion just to try and take control of the board here. This is another upside of the play that Chakki made over the Shield Bearer play, is that he gets the extra cycle, because again, he knows he can still potentially lose this game to Malygos, because all he has in hand is Shield Slam and Brawl in terms of removal, and that armor gets cleared when Malygos comes down.
So now he gets to use that armor in a Malygos killing fashion.
Or by having Acolyte on the board, he gets a card closer to his second execute,
sure.
He gets a card closer to Cthulhu, which can just end the game, all this kind of good stuff. So again, the play that Chakki made, really considerate of all the various outs in this spot. And now we'll see if he can pull it all together here with one final draw. Picks up just a card, which is nice for the long term, but probably not good enough right now. Ancient Shield Bearer, Armor Up, Shield Slam, and Fiery War Axe will take care of the problem.
I'm trying to work out if there's anything else at all like I do, but even I can't find a crazy line that might be sometimes the right thing here that isn't that play. It just looks so natural to play.
So yeah, just a card, Armor Up, Shield Slam doesn't get you anywhere, Bash doesn't get you anywhere. I think the Shield Bearer play is the only viable line, unless for some insane reason you've decided you fancy leaving Malygos alive here.
Even if you fancy leaving Malygos alive because you think he hasn't got the damage, you still can't occupy the board any better. There's not even a let's make 3 minions and hope Malygos doesn't do anything play. It's just Chakki being incredibly meticulous. For all of his joking around and memeing on Twitter and things like that, he's actually one of the slower, more considerate players. Sometimes that often gets lost in the shuffle when people watch him.
And he again decides to swing the War Axe damage to the face. I believe he still has second War Axe left remaining in his deck, which means he's setting up second War Axe plus Bash to be lethal on the following turn from hand. And again, also still has that Cthulhu draw.
I just thinking, like, he's setting up all these convoluted lethals, which make a lot of sense. You want every chance you can, but just hitting your opponent in the face for 18 seems a lot better.
It does seem quite good.
He'll be trying to do that, I think.
Yep. So Dethelor here really just doesn't have too many options. He can't let that 6/6 live. It has to go down to this mulch that he has in hand, unless he wants to try and cycle the Wrath here into another answer.
Unless, I mean, something like if there's an Ancient of War in his deck, he could play the Yasharaj and just, he didn't have a damage earlier, do you have one?
Sure.
Just looking again for outs, but this is the only thing that makes sense again.
Kobold Geomancer!
Why not?
He's 1 damage off lethal. Kobold Bash. Aww. What's that look on your face, Bonnie? you actually just had your brain melted by the thought of Kobold Geomancer into Bash.
I just wanted that to be a thing. I was just like living in a world for a moment there where that won the game.
So Justicar comes down just to increase the range even more. And now there's a very real possibility that Chakki can just outlast the deck. It's not really something that's going to come out too often, because at some point Cthulhu will probably just end the game. But this is something we talked about why is Yasharaj starting to reach into this deck? Yasharaj has appeared. One of the many reasons is it's just an extra threat against Warrior for this exact kind of situation where they're threatening to outlast every card you play. Yasharaj is just another huge bomb that can sometimes get you there. Yeah,
this game has been a bit extreme in that regard, in that Chakki got so far ahead.
Wrong way round, buddy!
That's not how that works. But this has been a bit extreme, but you can see how in another match, even in this match, he put some pressure on.
Barongeddon and Bash the Face means Chakki, the Dreamhack Austin champion, proud owner of a golden card back, is going to advance through the Swiss as a 1-0 player. But remember, this is Swiss, so there is a long way to go. And Dethelor has shown himself to be an absolute champion in Swiss formats, a 9-0 player previously.
Yep, job well done to Chakki. He's able to take a pretty long series, and that finally concludes round number 1. Again, apologies for the viewers who were expecting us to go to round 2. We had this technical problem delaying it, but we also want to thank Chakki and Dethelor for being flexible, as they definitely were pretty frustrated for not being able to start up the series in time. With that, I think it's interesting to just see how the strategies are playing out. We mentioned in the pre-show that we thought Yasharaj Druid would actually make quite the splash in this tournament, and I think it is. Although I feel like it still suffers from the same normal Druid symptoms of, even if things go well, sometimes you sometimes fizzle out, but then sometimes you also have this amazing ability to go on a hot streak with Barnes hitting into Yasharaj or some other big threats. In the meantime, we have Chakki, who's joined us for a brief interview. So Chakki, how'd that series feel on your end?
Felt really good at first. I got some luck, especially in the second game when I beat Zoo with my Hunter, but obviously had some pretty bad games in the middle. I don't know, though. I had 3 favorable matchups to put up against Druid, so expected to win one, and I did.
Do you think Dethelor's lineup is the one that fit into what you were trying to beat? Because I think you have some unconventional stuff, one of them being Hunter, of course.
Oh yeah, I definitely think it's something that I'm very aware of coming in this tournament. I think Druid and Shaman, which I banned, Druid, Shaman, Warrior, Warlock is going to be one of the most common lineups. The other deck being Tempo Mage, which you didn't have, but those are all definitely decks that I was prepared for coming in.
Okay, cool. How do you feel like your condition is? I think one of the people coming from Americas are always concerned about how well they be playing in terms of their focus, their clarity. How do you feel on day number 1 here?
I feel pretty good. I mean, we got to our hotel 7 p.m. last night. I went to bed, and I slept 13 hours.
Dang, that's good.
Yeah, so I feel pretty good. Kind of seem adjusted to European sleep schedule.
All right, good. Well, everything's seamless. Do you guys have any questions on your end? Because I think we want to get round 2 started ASAP.
Yeah, just real quick, just talk to me about the last game. You went super aggressive towards the end of that, ignoring the Arcane Giant, pushing face. Did you have any kind of idea? Because you were pretty close to dead from his hand. He had absolute Malagos nonsense going on at the time.
Well, I didn't really have any defensive plays I could do.
Right.
Really, towards the end, the only thing I was afraid of was Malagos, innervate, swipe.
Yep.
So that's exactly what I was trying to play around there at the end, not playing the 6/6 that gains armor. Instead, I just played kind of smaller stuff, save that. I didn't really have any way to gain armor. I didn't draw Justicar or Bashes or I drew 1 shield block and I used it early, so I kind of had to just go with an aggressive line. I tried to put him in an awkward spot with the Sylvanas, which seemed to work. He was kind of talking to me about it after the game, said it might have been a mistake to play the second Giant into it, but yeah, it felt pretty fine from my end. He had a lot of cards the whole game, he had the double Nourish hand, so much so that he could use 1 for mana, but it felt pretty controlled the whole game. Maybe there were some spots where, yeah, I could have died to the absolute Malagos nuts, but there was nothing I could really play around from that end.
All right, cool.
All right, well, that's a really good breakdown, but we don't want to keep the action stalled too much longer, so we are going to a short break, but when we come back, we're going to have round number 2 here at the Dreamhack Grand Prix. Stay tuned.